Hello, everybody, and welcome to UX Tartu. I'm really excited about this opportunity that despite of this charming virus named Corona out there, we're still here and we have over 800 people. Can you imagine 800 people here online who have signed up for UX Tartu? And I will be your host, your moderator. I'm Triin Kask, so I will be moderating the event for till Friday actually. So Friday I'm off, and then Janno Siimar will be taking over. But starting from today, so I will be hosting the event. Let's start with the UX Tartu, which is happening for the 4th time, and this time online. The whole UX design community is here. So we're here despite the fact of the virus. And that's why maybe I think the topic for this UX Tartu is vital, designing for real life. So we're facing the real life now more than ever. UX Tartu is the official side event of Startup Day and the biggest startup conference in Baltics that will take place for the 5th time. Can you imagine Startup Day happening already for the 5th time? There are so many can you imagine moments here in my talk. And it will happen on January 27, 29, 2021. So mark your calendars because Startup Day is going to happen one way or the other, the coronavirus or not. We're already full-time preparing for that. And, you know, you have to be there because we're making sure that more epic, more awesome presenters, speakers from all around the world will come together, no matter what. So back to UX Tartu. Very important to notice that this event is brought to you besides Startup Day also by Velvet. And we're also glad to present our partners, Startup Estonia, thank you Startup Estonia, and RGB Baltic, thank you RGB Baltic. Now, let's go to the matchmaking and all other making platform Brella. So Brella is a very cool place to actually meet people when you're online and you can't meet them in person. But still, we have this great face-to-face opportunity for you in the matchmaking area. So make sure that after each presentation, you use 2 hours to get connected to these people that you would like to get matched the most. And also, Brella has this really cool AI that is going to highlight the relevant context to you, so take advantage of those. And also keep in mind that you have this opportunity 24/7 to also speak to the context that you have made on Brella matchmaking. Then also Q&A will happen in Brella. So after each presentation, I will be picking the questions that you have put into the chat box in Brella. So please be very precise and concrete with your questions. I will, of course, also go through the questions and cherry pick those that are relevant and really hit the mark. So I will be later then after the presentation asking those questions for you from the speaker. What else is in Brella? There's also virtual demo area where all the cool startups and companies are that are offering their jobs. So there are definitely go and look out for them. And also you can take a tour for getting more insights about Startup Day, Startup Estonia, Velvet, RGB Politics. So go and check out virtual demo area. And very important, although UX Tartu is a free event, we still think that we should think about those who are not maybe doing that well all the time, or who need more of our help, or who are there despite the virus and still hoping to get their foot off the ground. So there are so many different initiatives, startups, organizations, and we have chosen Estonian Blind Association for our donation partner. And Jakob Rosin will be introducing what this opportunity is about for you to donate.
Hello, my name is Jakob Rosin. I'm the chairman of Estonian Blind Union. We are the umbrella organization of blind and visually impaired people's organizations across Estonia. There's 16 of them, both national and local. I'm sure all of you know the benefits of modern technology and smartphones. You can book cabs, you can order food, read internet and news, watch TV shows, talk to your friends and colleagues. Unfortunately, this technology and those solutions are largely inaccessible for many blind people. Don't get me wrong, there are assistive technology solutions built into our smartphones today, anybody can use. But they are rather complicated and hard to grasp for people who are not technologically that advanced. So we are planning a series of courses to teach blind and visually impaired people the accessibility solutions in modern technology and ways they can use them to enhance their daily lives. If you want to help us out in buying equipment and providing those courses, feel free to give us a little donation. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jakob, and thank you everybody participating in UX Tartu and who you are choosing to donate to Estonian Blind Association. So you can find all the details to do your transfer also in the virtual demo area umbrella, and you can do it via PayPal or traditional bank payment. So now let's move on to the program. So every day we're having an hourly session with one speaker. And there will be 40 minutes talk, and then we will proceed with the Q&A session. Again, ask your questions in the Brella chat box. Before we kick off with today's topic, I will also go through the rest of the day. So tomorrow we have Valdma. On Wednesday, we have Sami Niemelä, and on Thursday, we have Jakob Rosin talking about his experience regarding user experience. And then on Friday, we will have Jamshid Alamuti. Now, let's start with today's speaker and presentation from Bilgi Karan. I don't know if you can do that at home, but I will be giving a round of applause for Bilgi. Woohoo! That's really awesome. I'm here. Can I hear, some other people maybe who have heard me screaming, like give a round of applause, actually applauding? No. But I imagine that you are. And Bilgi has been designing or has designed planes, phones, and he really knows about how to design physical and digital products. So this is exactly what he's doing at IKEA, designing smart home solutions. So definitely Bilgi is the real expert when it comes to user experience and design. So I'm very, very glad to give this virtual floor to Bilgi Karan from IKEA.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about smart homes, IoT, and how to design for the real needs of real people. I worked for a couple of decades in the business of design, and these are some of the companies that I made mistakes on behalf of and, learned together and been through quite a lot together. But first, I'd like to tell you a story about a man who lived a long time ago and made a pretty big mistake 150 years ago, approximately. So look at him. He's our engineer and inventor. He's super proud of the position that he's in. The year is 1878. He just invented a machine that can record and play back sounds with impeccable quality for its time. He thought that recording Granny's voice would make her immortal forever. I won't say his name just yet, but if you guessed, please keep it to yourselves. The problem was that no one really wanted this hard-to-use and expensive thing, but he believed that his invention was amazing. He didn't have a lot of respect for the users. He simply said that people were not advanced enough to understand what he created, really. So he went on a world tour trying to tell everybody who would listen how amazing this thing is. And a lot of people actually said, wow, this is really, really interesting. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. But I would bet that not a lot of you have actually seen a phonograph cylinder in your lives. But many of you surely have seen a turntable record, probably. Here's why. During the inventor's endless tours, there came a man called Emil Berliner that invented a competitor product with actually a deteriorating quality from start to the finish of the track. And also it couldn't even record sounds, but he focused on recorded music and pre-recorded content in general rather than the quality of your grandma's voice. His medium was much more portable and it instantly took off. Our inventor was devastated. He couldn't believe that people preferred this inferior machine over his superior creation. His name was Thomas Edison, actually. He's not famous for this phonograph at all. We will come back to the story later, but now maybe a few words about design. Today, design is such a large collection of activities and professions that it is even hard to keep track of the titles, really. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, there was the craftsman. Day in and day out, one person making the same wooden spoon again and again. It would take a long time to finish one product. With the invention of the steam engine, suddenly you could make hundreds of spoons in an hour. This led to the Industrial Revolution, but having the engine was not really enough. Somebody needed to plan the end result. In the beginning, this was the engineer. Get it? Steam engine, engineer. Instead of a craftsman making products one by one, a factory could make a ton of products with interchangeable parts. Of course, this required a lot of pre-planning so that we got products that were worth selling and having also. And there came the profession of design. The word designer, though, is much older than the profession of design. It was not always used like the way that we do today. In the beginning, it was used as liar, schemer even, and it was also used in sentences like, oh, that twisted designer, he fooled me again. It was also being used in religious texts like, who is the original designer of this universe? Deep. In early 1980s, Bill Moggridge, an industrial designer back in the time, was tasked to design the world's first portable computer called Grid. And he was designing the exterior only. One day, after the project was almost finished, he took one of the prototypes home for a tryout. He immediately realized that design was not really only about the hinge and the buttons anymore. It was much more about how this thing actually functioned, how it worked. So he's considered the father of interaction design, and he is one of the founders of IDEO. Then came this gentleman called Don Norman. He coined the term UX when he was still working at Apple back in 1993. He envisioned that people's experiences with objects and interfaces can be designed. That's an interesting angle, and it sparked a whole lot of discussions. So imagine it is a branch of design that deals with emotions and impressions. I liken this to designing a roller coaster. This is the perfect example of designing for feelings and emotions. It's not really about the steel rods, the structure, the car, and so on. It's a feeling of rush, really. Today, we know that we can create this feeling of rush with maybe VR and a rig. That's why design takes so much more height and so much more a higher perspective on development these days. So starting with a specific product in mind might not lead us to the right solution. When designing for Internet of Things, this trap can be quite dramatic. Let me start with a fictional mental exercise about a fictional idea. So why not include a wireless sensor into a plain seatbelt? A flight crew sometimes calls checking for seatbelts jokingly the crotch watch or the groin scan. It takes a lot of time for them, so they kind of hate it. So they have to go around checking the whole plane for all of the passengers, and some people don't want to do this, and so on. So let's try to help them. But first, let's look at the context a little bit. So when the pilot presses this button and you hear the bing sound, this placard lights up that you can see. And these lights go on that you can't really see, or maybe you haven't really paid attention, that alerts the flight attendants. So at this point, every passenger on the plane must be safely buckled up. This is a legal requirement. Imagine that we have an IoT system, a sensor in each belt buckle. Oh, by the way, how about the empty seats, first of all? Well, we can even put sensors in those seats so we can cross-reference the data so that the crew can see exactly who is buckled up and who is not from their phones. Right? Fantastic. Not really. So this is the reality. On a plane, the crew has somewhere between 60 to 90 tasks that they have to complete before the plane takes off. And most of their uniforms don't even have pockets. So an app is the last thing that they want or need. In this case, maybe a blinking light above the non-behaving passenger is better. But they also need to check the seatbelt tables and so on. There's so much more to what meets the eye. As you can see, we started from a seatbelt sensor and an app, but ended up with a simple blinking light that already exists on the plane. Enough flying, not that we can a lot these days. Let's get back home. The home is changing, and it is changing quite rapidly. Home used to be a very separate thing from work and socializing, and it was a refuge for many that made privacy possible. And IKEA does this kind of research called Life at Home every year. And when they asked thousands of people about their definition of home, 42% said that they felt more home outside their usual residence than in their home, really. Today, these concepts are getting more and more blurred and blended into one another. A future smart home needs to address all of these needs. Once upon a time, for the smart home, there was a utopic future vision where computers would run everything and they would change everything just because of their sheer capability of, well, computing. And here is one example. It's a home computer that you can store your recipes and retrieve them. Well, all you needed was actually a 2-week full-time course. So technology is really a word describing something that does not necessarily work yet. If we think of like a ballpoint pen, it is actually a really amazing technology with the viscosity of the ink and the perfectly spherical shape of the ball and so on and so forth. But we don't call it technology because it just works. So when we jumped into the smart home as IKEA, we just didn't end up putting a connectivity chip inside a bulb and calling it a day so that you can control it with your phone. And we basically said, yeah, but why? Instead of jumping to a solution, we went around visiting people's homes, both virtually and in reality, and trying to understand the problems understand the role of lighting in the home, really, for a lot of people. It turns out dimming was a major hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to lighting. Imagine that you have an old ceiling lamp or a lamp that you really like. How do you make that lamp dimmable? It is not that easy. Do you call an electrician and get a dimmer installed? What if you want to make that dimmer wireless? That's even much more expensive. So our solution was something like this: a light bulb and a wireless dimmer. You take this kit from the store, plug it into the bulb in the socket, insert the batteries into the remote, and voila. You have a dimmable light with a remote control. It is literally a little duplication of the known wall dimmer, but it is also wireless. We also realized that our competition was not necessarily other smart bulbs. It was the regular dimmer. So as a kit, we had to beat the price of that in order to make it worthwhile for the customers. €10 for a dimming kit was an unimaginable price for a smart bulb back in the day. But, well, it worked for us. Later on, the team wanted to make it possible to control lights from an app, but not for the sake of it. Again, it was the people's needs that drove this. We saw that they needed to wake up with light, they needed to feel safe when they were away with a timer, they needed to create moods for different activities. They also wanted to control lights with their voice, maybe. Of course, the app itself is not the ultimate goal. So today, we're in a place that we can wake you up smoothly in the morning with sound, lights, and blinds. We can let you change your mood for a hardworking night, but also wind down. Provide you with a feeling of safety when you come home. We have remotes that you can use even with your elbow. We help you create a party mood with color bulbs. We understand that household has many people and many needs in it. So we try to address most of them with our system. Today, we have quite a good range that covers the needs around lights, blinds, and sound. The key here is actually the synergy between different products and also the synergy between the products and their users. The beauty of it is that you can start very, very small, so you can have one bulb and one remote. And you can add another bulb without the need of an app, really, or a control outlet with a switch, and you're on your way to making your home smart. So the gateway is the computer or the home computer that really doesn't require a 2-week course today. And of course, this is a challenge to develop, and it's a challenge to develop in a meaningful manner, really. We never really want to make our users' lives more complicated, and it is a really easy thing to do if we don't pay attention. And that's why one of our most cherished principles is the escalator principle. Imagine an escalator. Even when it breaks down, it is still a set of stairs that you can use. If the battery in your remote in our system runs out, the bulb still works as a regular bulb with the light switch. We're also building a system that is not necessarily dependent on internet all the time. And even some of our servers are offline, or if you have a sketchy internet connection, you should still be able to use this system. And this, we believe, is the only way to reach beyond the geek of the home. Well, talking about geeks, the state of smart home today resembles the state of personal computers the end of 70s or the beginning of 80s. Well, I don't know if anybody can guess what this contraption here really is. It is a brand most of you respect. It's an Apple I computer. When you gave $666.66, yes, all you got was the PCB thing on top. You had to put the rest of it together yourself. Many people today similarly piece together their smart home system themselves, since there is really no common standard. And things are moving, but not that fast. Internet of Things can be very hard to move sometimes. It has many parts that are quite blocky. And reaching full customer satisfaction can be extremely hard, partly because of this reason. This also means that any designer working in this field needs to learn quite a bit about connectivity and connectivity standards and new technologies before even starting to design something. Smart home is sometimes also called home automation, and this is probably the holy grail of all. A home that does everything for you automatically, doesn't even have to ask. Well, this is really, really not that easy. First of all, you need to know the context. What is going on in the house? But knowing the context is really not enough. We need to understand what is going on in the user's mind as well. And knowing the intent is actually the holy grail of UX, probably. So what does the user intend to do? If we knew this, we would have designed things that were almost perfect. So in this case, we need to know this so that the system can take action and react to things properly. And some users actually claim that they can do it themselves, but most users, unfortunately, are not programmers that can actually program something that is going to actually cover all of the edge cases that might happen in a home. So not every user can throw together also a smart home using do-it-yourself solutions, especially if you buy into more expensive ecosystems. You will have a harder time reaching this dream without breaking your bank. We know that also even our most advanced users do not rely on only one touch point, such as automation or physical controls or app or voice. They can prefer one or the other from 1 minute to the other. And since we can't really automate everything, what we're doing is we're developing and maintaining all of these touch points almost equally. So in design in general, we say devil is in the details, but instead in IoT, we say devil is in the transitions, really. It's not really about perfecting the states, the objects and the screens, making them beautiful, but it is mostly about the transitions between them. And also a really important transition is between customer and user. A very important shift in mindset since 2000s has been the shift from customer focus to user focus. In retail environment, this is extra important because the customer who is actually paying for the product, the minute that they leave the store, the checkout counter, they become a user. And then also when they bring the products to their homes and start to use them, it's not only them they're using it. Even if it's only them they're using it, there are other people who are impacted by it. There are also different types of users. So we have to focus on all kinds of users, really. And you can really, really feel this when you're designing an Internet of Things product more than anything, I would say. It's a similar thing in medical and some other areas as well. And one trick that you might use to actually make sure that you are addressing all of them is like work like all users are watching you. Imagine the people that you have met along the way and imagine that they are watching you and judging every step that you're taking and see if they're going to approve in your imaginary mind or not. So instead of imagining a customer deciding between competitors, it's much better imagining a user using your system or product or service. Just like this. I mean, this is nothing attractive for a designer to design, really. You're talking about a boom that goes up and down according to whether a payment has been done or not, or it looks pretty simple. But if you actually drill into it, the complexity is pretty high. You're going to see this person in this vehicle is going to have a very hard time in a moment. They're going to see when they come close to the orange thing that they won't be able to open their door because they're too close. But if they were too far, they wouldn't be able to reach the credit card reader and so on. So these kind of things are typically things that don't really are attractive to UX designers, and they were not in the past. But believe you me, I think in the future, more and more projects are going to be about designing these seemingly simple but quite impactful things. And in these kind of things, actually getting feedback loops right is super important. And when we're talking about feedback loops, they are the things that the world is really running on. So a company that bought that boom system once upon a time, they don't necessarily care about the user unless they hear a direct complaint. So positive or negative, as we said, I mean, feedback loops are running the world, really. If you're stuck in traffic, you hear a honk behind you, either you give the way or you give a finger. If in a friendship, you get 3 or 4 calls, and if you don't answer, maybe the 5th one might never come. In product quality, the feedback loops are even longer in physical products. Maybe you hear about something bad about your product maybe in months or maybe years. And in environment, it's really, really drastic, of course. We might not see the bad impacts of our actions for years to come. But there is actually a shortcut to feedback loops, which is empathy. Empathy cuts a shortcut in long feedback loops, especially. Empathy makes it easy to bring together the maker and the affected. And when we're talking about inclusivity, this is really important. For example, our vision of the smart home is for the many people, as we call them, the people with thin wallets and big dreams, and not only people with full use of their body and mind. This goes beyond the permanently disabled. It also covers things that are situational. Imagine a new dad, with a baby after 2 hours of nonstop crying. He should be able to just hit a button with his elbow to turn off all the lights, music, and maybe close the blinds. Any smart home system or product should really take this into account and go beyond the resident geek of the home and address the kids, the elderly, the differently abled, and even the guests, maybe even the pets. So prototyping and testing are great tools in creating this empathy in your teams or in your organization, especially with products with longer feedback loops. There is a sharp divide when you're interviewing users, when you're talking to them. The divide between attitude, the things that they say, and the behavior, the things that they do. They rarely match one another. Not that users are lying. They might remember their behavior wrong or overestimate their aptitudes and subjects or underestimate themselves. A simple way, though, of overcoming this conflict is to ask users, show me. When they're talking about something that they usually do or just done yesterday or about to do, just ask them, show me. And this works in real situations as well as virtual visits and in the situation that we are today, because we should focus on solving real needs for real people, and uncovering these real needs are much more important than trying to sell our ideas to them. I mean, these needs can be as simple as reaching a light switch. So UX actually has a lot to do with how we as designers reflect our values onto the users. Remember Edison? What should we do not to end up like him? We must have an unending curiosity towards the needs of the people, the society, and also the planet. And we must respect them all the way in an actionable way. We have to understand that our decisions have to be based on this respect and the information that we have gathered and understood about the people that we are serving. Engineers really love to make things just because they can sometimes, and that's a wonderful thing. And that's great experimenting. But when it comes to creating value, we also have to look into things that we should do. And as designers, we are quite good at that most of the time. But what maybe we're not really good at is trying to understand that there's a very tiny sliver of intersection set between the things that we can do and we should do. And that is usually the way forward for an organization to grow and scale. So we need to look for this tiny sliver very, very carefully. I don't know whether you are a designer or not, but if you are, you might have thought that design is a form of art. I did that too once upon a time. But then we were told that design is actually business. We wanted a seat at the table and we got it. Now what? Now we're seeing that with data, A/B tests, and reusable components, maybe Designing is a scientific process, a scientific endeavor. If you are feeling confused, welcome to the club. I am too. A long story short, I think that design is all of those things, really, because everybody is a designer. And that is actually good news. It means that you are not alone. It is a very desirable state. Imagine that everyone in your organization is having an insight into the user's mind and respect and curiosity. Your job as a designer would be super easy. Hell, things would not really fall apart even if you don't show up for work on a Monday. So what is the job of the designer then? Maybe it is easier to explain with numbers. Well, first, 1x, design for the individual. Don't design for a cohort or a persona or a group of people. You might lose on inclusivity and respect. Know your users inside and out. Go and meet them. Even if you cannot meet them virtually, it's super easy. And 1000x, aim for impact. Try crazy things that might move the scale a little bit more than incrementally, but maybe dramatically. Wave this flag in your organization. And 1,000,000x. Beware of your reach. The button that you are designing might end up saving the world or ending it, or saving a lot of money to your organization or ending it. Imagine what if this button was used 1 million times every day, and design it like that. Well, I think that I can safely say that user-centered design is now dead. A well-designed product or a service makes things much more sustainable, inclusive, and meaningful, and not only for the user. It ideally slices through the needs of the user, the society, and the planet, because it should adapt technology to meaningful values, really. So let's all get cracking. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilgi. Now the time for Q&A. First of all, you were telling about getting the feedback, the real feedback from people who will be using your products. Maybe you can bring some real-life examples how you personally went out there to get this feedback.
Home visits is a quite common thing to do already, but when we're talking about users of home, like smart home systems, it becomes even more critical. And I remember this one situation when we'd done a virtual home visit actually to somebody that was living in Hong Kong. If you looked at it on paper, he was living in a 23 square meter apartment. And looked like he didn't need any remote controls really. But when we talked to him, we realized that a lot of the light switches were placed very, very inconveniently because he had to have different pieces of furniture everywhere. So a lot of the outlets and a lot of the switches were hidden behind things. So we were so interested to hear this. For example, he didn't have access to how to also move his blinds and so on and so forth. So you can uncover something quite interesting when talking to people.
Indeed. So what has been your... I have an echo in my ear. I can't talk. Sorry. Those things happen online. Okay, so my question is much better. What has been your personal failure, the biggest failure in your UX designer career?
My biggest failure, I would say, trusting the things that people said rather than understanding their behaviors. That was one of my general failures, and I talked about the attitude and behavior and between them. As a designer, I would say, for many, many years, I was an industrial designer working on phones and accessories. And at some point I realized that I was responsible for millions of phones out there that were forgotten in their boxes, or sometimes just discarded without being utilized anymore. And I considered that a failure, and that was one of my reasons why I moved a little bit into meaningful innovation and trying to understand what would be useful in the long run without having to being discarded.
Okay. But if we talk about going back to IKEA and the design process there, how do you implement the safety aspect, or how do you treat safety in home solution design?
Absolutely, safety comes first. In fact, one of the main reasons that we have made a motorized blind was not necessarily the excitement about the technology, or that we have people that were lazy that didn't want to move their blinds by going to them. IKEA has eliminated the usage of cords on blinds for opening and closing because of hazards for children in the home. And when we understood this with the textile department, they actually, we came up with the idea together saying that why don't we make a motorized blind that would address the solution first and foremost. So it's a very, very real need that started it. And a lot of people are using it for other purposes as well, to maybe automate their homes, or maybe try to operate their blinds from a distance and so on. But this was the seed of the idea where it came from.
Okay. Now going back to the, not back, but let's say back and forth. So if we think about UX design and how it has developed from the past to today, and what is going to happen. So in your experience, what has been the biggest change, and what do you think what will be the biggest change in the essence of UX design?
I would say that we are increasingly getting to a higher level. This is true for example, organizational structure. We are represented in higher and higher places, getting a seat at the table, as we sometimes call it, but also higher and higher level in thinking. One of the first people that we have hired for IKEA Home Smart was a business designer, and that's quite important. We're talking about understanding the needs of the organization, the needs of the people, and marrying them in a value proposition. And this is not something that a designer was involved in the past. But also when you talk about higher level things, we're also talking about, for example, the marriage of physical and digital. This is my core area, of course, but we're seeing designing for the five senses more and more. The excitement around screens are kind of quickly dissipating. Voice was probably the first trigger for this, but then came other areas that made screens a little bit, let's say, not the focus area anymore, not the ideal solution for everything. Still, I think we have quite a big love for colorful touch screens, of course, but we realize that people have a life, and like looking down all the time, they cannot live this life to the fullest, maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah, I totally agree that it's becoming more holistic in this sense, that it's really moving up and down, not just being like a separate entity there. Going to the user reviews, so in your experience, or what do you suggest to our audience? What are the best user reviews to get before launching a product?
I would say the best of the best of the best is actually getting someone to use it for as long as possible, and really understand what they got out of the product. And the ultimate test for this is that, and this is practically impossible, but if you really want to understand whether a product is successful UX-wise or not, yank it out of a person's hand after 6 months of usage, and then you will see if they're crying, then you know that you have a really, really good product in your hand. That means that gave something to their life. But also really understanding the totality of it and the limitations of the time, like a test as much as possible with the earlier prototype, and record the results that you get, and try to iterate as quickly as possible, and basically rinse and repeat. And that is the best way of getting reviews from the people. And then when you ask for feedback, I think it's really important to have the correct attitude. This is not the kind of attitude that I'm talking about in the user test, but from your inner self. When you ask for feedback, you need to be prepared to take the feedback. Don't ever expect people to say, "Oh, I love it, great, let's do this." Actually, if you don't hear anything bad during the development phase, it means that you're gonna hear really bad things after the launch.
Yeah, that's very important actually to get some negative feedback. I totally agree on you this one, because we have, you know, this psychological fear that if bad things are told, then it means bad, but actually it sometimes means better than only good words. Also, one question about, you were talking about the synergy between different products which you're developing at IKEA, but maybe you can generalize here how to approach this synergy between products. If, you know, it's a random company, like how do you choose those first products to go with?
Well, I personally could not find a framework that works for everything in this area. It's a little bit ad hoc. But sometimes there are, let's say, there's symmetries between different products that might look like they belong together. For example, we thought this when we first started working with blinds after lights. Well, you know, you can imagine it's like there is a level of them, you know, going up and down, and we thought that they were very, very similar, and we even thought that we could probably treat them the same way, but we never really, in the very beginning, somebody said like, oh, actually it's some kind of a light bulb also, but in actually the usage and the meaning that it controls the amount of light that you let through your window. So it's almost like a reverse light bulb. And that meaning, actually, the essence of the problem that you're trying to solve, maybe brings together some kind of a synergy from different areas. For example, and this is very different from the notion of vertical integration in business, where you try to, you know, capture the user's attention all the way through a path. But this is more like, oh, if that is happening, shouldn't that be happening as well, and so on. It's a little bit instinctual, but you're going to get this sense very, very easily if you go and watch people live, if you talk to them intently, and if you really, really listen and respect.
Good advice. Personal question. So how do you overcome a bad feedback, in this sense, bad feedback that you actually understand, okay, this product is not going to fly, we're not going to develop it, we're not going to launch it. How do you deal with this? It is stressful, I reckon. So maybe some good like psychological tips to designers.
If they're, you know, young designers or you know, prospective designers listening to us, I think that the seniors probably have the different ways of coping with this. But I would say that you are not your work. So your work is a separate entity that you have created, and the moment that you created it, it is not a part of you anymore. You know, that is the beauty of sketching and putting something down on paper or screen. And then let it be its own thing, and you can always create something better. So everything is a beta, everything is a sketch. So when you get negative feedback, be very, very happy that you got that negative feedback, because I'm guessing a lot of the people out here are working with digital things that can be changed. So it is an opportunity to change. If it's even a physical thing, you still have a maybe possibility of changing, or sometimes you can stop the sales of a thing. If you think that something is not working, it's really about understanding that if something is not working, basically rather than focusing on your ego being bruised, focus on the maybe millions of people out there that are not happy because of that. They paid money for something and maybe it's not working. Imagine that and try to empathize with them rather than your inner ego, I would say.
That is so clever, because this is what I see very often with starting entrepreneurs, that they are so attached to their first initial idea, even if they don't have the first minimum viable product or the first design even, and they just can't let it go. It's like a baby. So as I hear from you, it's not your baby. It's a separate entity. So don't connect too much with what you're trying to build. Thank you so much. So how was your virtual experience or user experience with this virtual presentation?
I had quite a good time, I have to say. The team that is behind is quite capable. We have been doing this virtual thing for a while. We've been arranging a lot of workshops through like 2 or 3 time zones, and it's quite a challenge, I would say. For a speaker, of course, not being able to hear the applause or laughter or whatever is the hardest. But at least I have the Q&A session where I could get some of the reflections from you.
Yeah, exactly. So I can give you a clap as well. Can you hear my clap? Thank you so much, Bilgi. And I'm sure, that all these hundreds of people listening to you are there clapping as well. So thank you so much for finding the time and joining us for today. And we are now going on with closure. So that was the first day, it went like, gone with the wind. Again, the awesome sponsors and partners we have, Startup Day, Velvet, Startup Estonia, and RGB Politics. Thank you so much. We couldn't have done this without you, and also our awesome speakers, and of course you, audience. And again, donate. Please use this free spot to show your goodwill towards Estonian Blind Association. And you can find all the donation details in the virtual demo area in Brela. Now tomorrow, we're waiting you back tomorrow, 1 p.m. again. And tomorrow we have Jordan Valdma from Producement, and he will be talking about a very important topic, how to build products fast. This is, the never-ending debate about fast versus quality. And I'm pretty sure that he will give you some very good advice regarding how to overcome that dilemma. So let's wrap up it for today. Use your time wisely now. You have 2 hours to do the matchmaking in Brela. And later on, you can use the 24/7 opportunity to text to contact those leads that you have there. And have a nice matchmaking, and see you tomorrow. Woo! Kas sai läbi?